Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down, of course, as always, with Mr. Keith Myers. How you doing, Keith?
I'm doing good. It's been a while.
It's been just a minute, you know. I think that we have kind of taken full advantage of our summer kind of quasi-vacation time and not really sinking in completely to this off-season as far as like the summer schedule. Normally we do a couple shows a week, and this summer it seems like we've been doing maybe one, sometimes two. And it's actually been kind of nice. We've been doing this show for 9 seasons now, and but we'll sink back into a normal schedule, I think, as soon as we do like the pregame, postgame analysis stuff that we do during the season. We'll be back to 2 shows a week for sure.
Absolutely.
But lots of coming and goings. We didn't do a postgame analysis of the Raiders game. We thought, you know, there's so many people in the space now, podcast area, that do that immediately, hop on that same night or whatever and kind of recap the show. So no reason to do that necessarily, but just general impressions from that moment forward to today, how things are going in camp and what's the overall feeling that you've got.
Yeah. I mean, we can kind of look at the first preseason game and all of that. Like, it's hard to, I don't know. There's so few starters played on either team that it's hard to make any kind of assessments out of it, other than to look at some individual players. And honestly, like, I like the way the running game looked. They ran the ball really well, and they did so with
175 yards.
Yeah, a pair of guys that we consider backups on the offensive line out there for a lot of it. So,
Jarcadia, right now, George Lonnie, you know, he's making a name for himself as far as being that third guy on the roster for sure. He's making that into a battle with Damien Martinez, and I thought Damien Martinez looked fairly tepid out there comparatively. But it was nice to see both of them. And then Jarcadia Wright kind of popped for me, a guy that I hadn't yet seen. And nobody had. And it was kind of nice to see a bigger back out there, really kind of play big and show that he could be a guy that you could keep on the practice squad. And if something happens, you'd feel pretty confident that at least he could have that physical presence that you'd want on there.
Yeah. I really liked what I saw from Helani. Like, he was decisive. He made people miss. And then you look at like his touchdown, and he just got around the corner and was outrunning everyone. He looked really good in that game. Like, what was it, 76 total yards, or just running yards? That's the kind of thing that you need if you want to win this. It was also interesting that he started and Martinez did not, which gives you an idea that he's probably above Martinez on the depth chart right now, and may have the inside track towards making the roster as the third back.
As you said earlier in your opening, it was like it's hard to know exactly what you're seeing out there. You're doing second team at best, right, in this game, and then third team, fourth team, guys that are just fringy all the way around on both sides. And then you hear so much positive information coming out of camp and not a lot of negative, that the impression is, and of course this is all around the NFL, all 32 teams are like this. You have a shot. This is the year. This is all going to come together and everything's doing well. Are you seeing anything at all that would give you kind of the opposite impression as far as any position group or any struggles that seem to still concern you at this point?
I mean, it's hard to know where the offensive line's at. Like I said, the preseason game, which might not, or it really isn't an indication of what things are going to look like in the season, but it really would make you think that, okay, this offensive line group's in good shape. Like, we're going to be fine. Like, both both tackle spots looked good, even with Charles Cross not out there. Gray Zabel looked fantastic. Sundell at center did fine. With Oluwatimi out with the tightness in his back and whatever that is. And then right guard turned out not to be a massive liability, at least early on. We'll see. That is we'll see what happens.
Go either way.
When you play other team starters and
right.
They're not being vanilla and all of that. But I liked what I saw. I liked what the running game was doing, inside zone. I love the outside zone and what that looked like and what they were able to do with it. And I freaking loved Robbie Oots at fullback.
Right.
It's so nice to see an old school fullback just going up there and just taking people on and clobbering people and opening holes.
He's even bigger. Great. I mean, bigger than most old school fullbacks. Like the dude is 275 pounds. The thing that really intrigues me about him is just the way that he moves with that 275 pounds. It's like he really moves fluidly. He looks very athletic. It's not like he's a clunky guy at all. When he had that pass catch and ran over the defensive back there, I thought that was outstanding of something that's going to be present all the time, just kind of be your enforcer guy out there, and really competent as far as just a blocker. It's almost like having, you've got 2 tight end sets and sometimes 3. It's almost like having a 4th guy out there. And I thought, last year, even in preseason, I thought that we struggled as a team to move the ball forward consistently in the running game. Like you often had stops in the backfield. Instead of falling forward, sometimes it seemed like defenses were pushing us back constantly. And the feeling I had out of this game is like we were always forward. We were always pushing forward, falling forward. Even if we were struggling a little bit, at least we get 2 or 3 yards, and that was kind of the minimum standard. And I'd like to see a little bit more of that for sure. But again, preseason game, second string mostly. We'll find out. I do agree with you on the offensive line thing. I think obviously the 2 tackles and Gray Zabel for sure are figured out. I'm not worried too much about the center. I think Oluwatimi, if he comes back, he's still out with the back thing. We can talk about that and his ability to hold that number 1 spot. And then Sundell basically been doing number 1 stuff now for a couple weeks. I think that he's probably got the inside track at this point to take that spot. And I'm totally fine with that. I'm comfortable with him in that spot. It's that right guard spot. I know Anthony Bradford, body composition change, all of that this year. I was a little bit more high on him in the offseason than you were. You thought maybe he would struggle to kind of make the roster. Turns out that he's really I think his ability to overcome his weaknesses is a fascinating thing for me, because obviously he's got those physical limitations as far as his ability to move in space, but at the same time, he's not horrible at that. And he's been better than advertised in this scheme, just because of his work ethic and his ability to kind of do everything the coaches are asking him to do. So it looks like he's going to make that his position, and he's going to be a starter. What are your feelings around Anthony Bradford at this point, given from where you were at in like April to where you're at now?
I mean, it's hard to say. I'm still not really high on him in any way. But he sort of won that job. He sort of won it by default because no one's challenged him, which is really
most disappointing. That is disappointing.
That's the disappointing thing, is that you knew that he had a low ceiling. You hope that the floor came up a little bit from where it's been in the past, and it looks like maybe it has. But you know that his ceiling is pretty low, and so you want someone with a higher ceiling to finally challenge him and knock him out of that spot. So then you're seeing development of something that will eventually make everything significantly better. But Christian Haynes just hasn't done it. Lumea just hasn't done it. None of the other guys have stepped up and done it, it's disappointing. It really is. Although Haynes did play pretty well in this game too. Couple plays where he's downfield making blocks, 10 yards down the field and springing runs, and that's the kind of work ethic that's gonna pop on tape. And so I thought he played pretty well, but not any better than Bradford did. So it's not like he made up some ground. No, not really. Both the guys just, they've been as advertised, which is not great, but hopefully not as bad as they've been in the past.
I think the coaches really love Bradford as far as his work ethic and his physicality. And I think they will just kind of lean into that. Now the pass blocking, he's been good. And according to all reports in practice, he's been effectively stonewalling most people that he's gone up against in 1v1s and 2v2s and all that kind of stuff. So I have some, and the scheme I think helps him. It helps all the linemen as far as just helping scheme him to be more successful. And I think that, obviously on an island when he's pass blocking, that's where he's vulnerable. But I think most teams have a weakness across their starting five. And if he's the weakest link in a starting five that's actually really pretty decent, and it looks like they're at least league average and potentially better than that in this scheme, I'm okay with that. I mean, you want perfection, obviously, in your top five. You want to have 5 all pros all across the line. It's just not realistic. And I think having him there to me is, especially with the focus on the run game, I think the positives outweigh the negatives. That's it for me, at least at this point. We'll see what happens as time goes on. Yeah.
And that's we'll see what it's like when he's out there blocking against, starting caliber defensive linemen too.
Yeah. Like Chris Jones from the Chiefs this weekend.
Do you think Chris Jones is going to play though?
No. Well, Andy Reid said his starters will play a couple of series, so we'll see.
Okay.
It'd be nice, actually. I'd like to see it, actually. Just, we haven't seen Sam Darnold yet in live action. I'd like to see a couple of series, at least 2 with us. With them, I don't care, but it would be nice to see some real football for at least 2 or 3 series where we can get kind of a feel. It doesn't have to necessarily be completely successful in all the things, but just to get a feel for what it's going to look like on Sundays, that would be great. I wanted to talk just briefly about, and we've already kind of touched on this, Oluwatimi. As far as his injury, his back issue, he's now entering week 2 as far as being out. Sundell has come in. We knew that they were fairly close and even, but, before the injury, Oluwatimi was taking first team reps consistently. And now Sundell is it too late for Oluwatimi? Coach Mike Macdonald did come out and say, we're not going to play in a rotation here. We're going to identify our starting 5 and that's going to be it. Is there still enough time if he gets his back in order to be able to take that job back?
I don't know. You still have, if he gets healthy quick, because I don't think he's going to play in Friday's game. But he'll still have a 1 preseason game and 2-3 weeks of practice before the first game. But he's got to know. They've got to know before that last week. So he's got a week and a half of practice in a preseason game to try and win his job back. It's hard because they were really close, and then you miss 8 or 9 days.
It's very unfortunate timing for him.
Couple of preseason games, it sets you back, and it gives the other guy the continuity with the guys around him. And yes, there's still time, but I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. Just they were too close to begin with. Now, if he had been significantly better, then he comes back and is. Even if he's taken a step back and the other guy's taking a step forward, you still give him the shot. But he wasn't significantly better. He was close. And Um, this is the kind of thing where, a guy like Sindel ends up with a job.
So conversely, on the other side of the ball, like Jonathan Hankins, plays opposite of him at nose tackle, hasn't had a single practice, is out with, a back issue as well. And he's got no firm timeline coming in, but the coaches talk as though he's still the starter and he's just missing some time. And as soon as he comes back, he's going to be in there. That just goes to show you that A, the depth at nose tackle, but B, the ability for a vet who already has proven everything he needs to prove. It doesn't need all the practice time, just shows up and knows exactly what to do, what he needs to do to be in condition to play.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But at the same time, like, you go look at what Quinton Bahana did in this game, and you think that Hankins needs to get back on the field and prove that he is worth that roster spot, because Bahana just stepped out and had a fantastic game.
Yeah, and Peely as well.
So you've got a couple of backups that are trying to push the vet, for playing time and or maybe even a roster spot. And it's not like Hankins was good last year. He wasn't. And so going with the younger, cheaper guys with more upside, yeah, I could see the team doing that. And so Hankins needs to get out there. He needs to start practicing. He needs to show that his talents warrant a roster spot before a guy like Quinton Bahana, knocks him off the roster.
If he doesn't show up and doesn't practice, I mean, there's really you could end up putting him on injured reserve, and since he hasn't practiced at all, he qualifies for just being on the PUP list, right? You can bring him back anytime.
Yeah, as long as he got put on the PUP before training camp started, but there was no reason for them not to, since he wasn't ready. So, yeah, he would be. I guess if you put him on the PUP, they're out for 4 weeks, but you can bring him back week 5.
So I wanted to talk to you about Ken Walker and Charbonnet. I've heard some rumblings, some talk about, especially from Kandata. I think he's mentioned it a couple different times, that Charbonnet has done enough, and Ken Walker's been out enough to supplant him as the number 1 running back and taking first team reps and starting week 1. What are your thoughts around them with it, the foot issues that Ken Walker has and the coaching staff obviously limiting reps and taking care of him, and Coach Macdonald come out and said, we've got a plan for Ken Walker and he's doing great, he's fine. What do you think about the running back role in this scheme and who gets what reps and all that kind of stuff?
Well, the running back, I mean, in this scheme, like, your guys there's going to be carries for guys, and you're going to want to spread it around over a couple of players. And I think, but it comes down to, the reps, like who gets 2/3 of them and who gets 1/3 of them. If Walker has to be metered that much, why not give the bigger load to Charbonnet at first, and just make sure that you're trying to you're keeping Walker healthy, so you have him throughout the season. That would make a lot of sense to me. Walker also is the more explosive player, and so maybe you want him out there. And it might be one of those things where they're in a situation where both guys get reps early in a game, and you go with the hot hand.
So at the quarterback position, it seems like, there's no question Sam Darnold's the guy, right? But for me, I don't know any more about Sam Darnold than I did on, essentially week 2 of training camp. Guy's competent. He's come in. He's, according to all reports, has shown some notable improvement in the scheme, playing faster. He's a little bit more accurate. He's got strong decision-making, but none of that really matters, right? Because we haven't seen it in a game, and we won't see it really until it presents starting in week 1. That to me is the biggest unknown in this entire equation as far as where the team is at and what the expectations are. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I would agree with you. Until we can see it, it's hard to establish where our expectations should be. But the coaches don't seem to have any concerns, because if they thought, oh, he needs the reps at game speed and whatever, they'd be playing him, and they're not. They're just like, nope, he sits. He's our starter, and he's good, and we're fine.
Well, reports are that he will play in this game.
Yeah, but he's going to play how little? Like how as much as Gino played for the Raiders in the last game.
If they're going to give him like 2 series, let's just say I hope those are very long, methodically driven series, like where he can run at least 12 to 14 plays, and have 2 scoring opportunities. Like I'd love to see that, because I think that I would feel a lot better seeing success in a couple of series and then shut him down, and that's it, and that's all we get until the first game. If he fails, or there's an interception, or if he runs 3 plays and there's 3 and out in 2 series, I'm still going to have a lot of questions, and I think everyone else will too.
Oh, absolutely. I hope that he does get in there, and they get a methodical drive where they're converting on 3rd down, and he's throwing doing some stuff, and this is what the Seahawks offense is going to look like. A lot of running the ball, throwing on the run for the quarterback, that kind of stuff. But my guess is that if they do that and they take it and methodically move down the field and score, whether it be 3 or 7, he's done. Like 2 series is, if one of them goes, if the first one ends up quick, and ends quick, then he'll get a second. But if the first one is 10 plays, down the field, he's done. So, but either way, like I agree. I would like to see it. I want to see it at game speed. I want to get a feel for it. But it's less about us,
right? It's meaningless.
It's less. Because that's giving us, okay, we'll feel better. But what do the coaches feel like? Where does his teammates feel like? If they're like, nah, he's our guy, and we're in great shape with him, then it doesn't really matter what you and I think.
I think, though, in the back of everyone's mind, including the coaches, is we'd like to see this executed on at real speed against another team.
Isn't that what the joint practices against the Packers are for?
Sure. So let's go back to the game really quick and talk about what you saw from both Drew Lock and Jalen Milroe. I thought Lock looked like Lock. Like there were some brilliant moments. I think that touchdown to Torrey Horton was one of them. And then Jalen Milroe, I think his first 6 or 7 completions, where he went 5 for 6, and then in the 3rd or the 4th quarter, it dropped off a little bit, and we saw a little bit more improvising and running around. What are your thoughts?
Well, you're right. Lock looked like Lock. He had some really good moments. He had some awful moments. That interception that he threw was like about as bad of a throw as you can make. I mean, Horton had his guy beat. He was 2 full steps ahead, and the ball was just so painfully underthrown. That I don't know, that was kind of disappointing, but he's a backup, right? He is a guy that will do enough to make you think, well, maybe he could be a starter, and then he'll do enough that will keep him from being a starter. And so, yeah, I was okay with his play. Milroe was fun. He was exciting. He did a good job of keeping his feet underneath him. And those kind of things. Wasn't put under a lot of pressure early, and he completed passes, was put under pressure a little later, and ran a lot, scrambled a bunch, and did some stuff with his feet. I thought Michael Robinson, from the play-by-play, had a good point. He was talking about, when you got mobile quarterbacks, who are the throwers with running ability and who are the runners with throwing ability. And he was talking about Milroe being a runner with throwing ability. He's like, you got to get him running early, because that gets kind of his body and brain up to game speed, and then start throwing. with him. And they kind of did that. They had a couple of early runs, and he looked good at that. And then they let him settle in as a thrower. I am curious on if that will ever be the plan with him, like where you're just going to expect him to run a lot early and then start throwing later. But I don't know. We saw enough to us to be like, yep, he's our number 3 quarterback. He's going to develop, and he didn't look like, wow, we're wasting our time, which was a possibility. But he absolutely did not do that. So I don't know. I felt pretty good about what I saw.
So sticking with the offense, just for just a little bit longer, I wanted to talk about the evolution of Torrey Horton. When I first made my my initial camp roster, and I do this in an Excel spreadsheet, I had Torrey Horton as my 5th wide receiver, just above Tariq Young, but below Jake Bobo, and obviously Scantling. Since then, this dude has, this camp battle has been settled. He is now the number 3 wide receiver in this offense, and Scantling's job is on the line. Like, talk to me about that, what you're seeing, what you're hearing about Torrey Horton.
I mean, Horton has done everything. Just he's picked everything up and just really kind of leaned into his physical talents. And, guys talk about how quiet he is at the top of his routes, right? His ability to just sink his hips and make that cut and not have to stutter and not have to, slow down. There's no throttling involved there. It's just, he's just so quick in and out of his cuts. And for a guy his size, it's crazy. And then he's got tremendous hands. And the more comfortable that he gets, just the more he just keeps making plays.
Yeah. And according to everyone too, yesterday he just made another spectacular play in practice where he went up in a red zone opportunity with Drew Lock throwing to him, and he came down with a ball that nobody thought was going to be a completion. And I was just like, the guy keeps showing up.
Multiple of those. And yeah, he's definitely the 3rd receiver right now, which is awesome because that was a position awesome. where they kind of needed someone to step up. You had JSN. He's been great throughout camp. And Cooper Kupp's a consummate pro and a guy that's, when he's healthy, is fantastic, but is not healthy as often as anyone would like anymore. And so you kind of knew that was what you had, and you needed someone else to step up to be the number 3 guy, but also to take some pressure off of JSN if Kupp gets hurt. When Kupp gets hurt, I think is probably a more accurate way of thinking it. And Horton's done that. He's absolutely done that. He's just worked his way up the depth chart, and now he's the guy getting the reps with the ones. And they're rotating him in with Kupp as the number 2 guy. So
yeah, no, it's interesting because, we have Cooper Kupp and we have Njigba on the roster, yet it's Torrey Horton who you're hearing about day after day in practice make these spectacular catches and get open and beat coverage and create yards after catch. And we're not hearing those things about Njigba and Kupp. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. They've already got their spots that, they do get metered in practice and so on and so forth. So Torrey Horton is kind of one of those players that just taking advantage of his opportunity to the fullest extent. And you're right about a guy needing to step up. And it really makes me feel much, much better about that position group. Like, if Cooper Kupp would go down, he gave you 12 games instead of 17. I'm not feeling so bad about it now. And that's maybe one of the reasons why Scantling could still have a roster spot secured, is that injury factor. Not that we're injured today, but we could be. And you want a guy like Scantling to be able to come in and take over that number 3 spot if Njigba and Horton are your first 2, and Cooper Kupp's on the sideline for a minute.
Yeah, because if you're like, okay, well, Scantling's, roster spots on the line because he's been beat out by Horton. If something happens to Kupp, how comfortable are you running with a 3 wide receiver set that's JSN, Horton, and Bobo? right? That's really what
That's
it
not
comes
going to
down
scare
to.
anybody, really.
Yeah. Same is true for Tariq Young at this point. Although he did some nice things in this game. Both those guys actually did some nice things in
And he's been very
Raider
consistent
game.
in practice. Right.
And they both do a lot of stuff on special teams. And so that helps them out. It makes it hard. It's one of those things where, you talk about keeping 5 wide receivers versus 6, and it's going to be hard. Do you do that? Do you keep 6 because you're going to need the depth at some point, but then where do you lose? I mean, does that mean that Martinez's roster spot now becomes a practice squad spot?
Right.
I will say I was disappointed in Martinez in the Raider game. He looked indecisive. Did not look like he was ready to come in and be a contributor in this offense. But zone blocking schemes don't always connect really quickly to guys. And we saw, you can go all the way back to Marshawn Lynch, right? His first 6 games in Seattle were pretty awful. And then he broke out and finally it started to click for him. And then he became just one of the best in the entire NFL. And so it might just be one of those things where he's still growing, he's still thinking too much and not running. And that's why Helani looks better, is because Helani's been in a zone blocking scheme for a full year now, and those keys, those reads are happening, more instinctually now. And so, and that might be what it is, but at this point, it really does look like Martinez is probably going to start on the practice squad, and Helani's making the roster.
I still have Martinez as my number 3 back, but you're right in everything that you just said. I will say this in Damien Martinez's defense is this was 3rd team offensive line stuff, and they did seem like they ran some power gap stuff as opposed to outside zone stuff when he did have his opportunities, and he was met close to the line of scrimmage on each of his carries. He just didn't show any fight to me. Like he didn't fight for that extra yard. He didn't initiate contact. He kind of went up to the line and just was met with a defensive player and just kind of collapsed. So I didn't see the things that I was hoping to see from him, which was playing to his size and showing a little bit of escapability and pop to his game. And I just didn't see it. Now that doesn't mean that he's not showing it every day in practice, and when given another opportunity, he doesn't. That equation doesn't change. So we'll see. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. I think we talked about the defensive tackles already in Pili and Bahana. I think those guys are showing that possibly both of them could make this roster. Maybe only one does, but the other one's going to go to the practice squad, no doubt. But the guy I really want to talk about right off the bat is a guy that was an undrafted rookie free agent that came in. We identified in the draft process as a guy that would be a good fit in this defense. And sure enough, this guy is showing up like consistently every day and really popping. And I think kind of gaining confidence as he goes along. And I think is going to be a factor in this defense. And that's Jared Ivey.
Yeah. Ivey, I keep saying it. Like the fact that he went undrafted to me is just absurd. Like I don't understand how a guy like him does not get drafted. And he's showing that. He's coming in and he works his tail off, and he makes different. Like he makes plays in practice. Like he's a guy that is beating the guys in front of him and making plays and getting stuff done. And he's just so explosive on the outside. That basically it was the Seahawks might as well have had another draft pick and picked him somewhere in the middle, because that's the kind of player that we did getting.
Kind of in Riley Mills. I mean, they're kind of essentially the same type of players. Riley Mills is just on the shelf right now. And that points me to kind of the next thing is like, okay, Mike Morris is showing up too. Like we've talked about Mike Morris as being a guy that's just essentially been non-existent for the first 3 years of his contract. And all of a sudden this year now he's really kind of come into his own and shown that physical presence that they'd like to see, especially up the middle. And that room all of a sudden now is crowded, especially when Riley Mills is available, say after week 8. Maybe he's not, maybe they shut him down for the year. That would make the roster decisions a little easier. But what do you do after Riley Mills comes back?
Well, I think by the time Riley Mills comes back, the question's already been answered. Because if you're 8-9 weeks into the year, somebody will be banged up, someone will be hurt, and there'll be a spot. I mean, that's the NFL. You don't get your entire defensive line healthy through 17 weeks. And so having a guy with his talent ready to come off the PUP list and practice and be, kind of a bottom end of the rotation type player this year while he, continues to learn the NFL and everything, but then be ready to come in and compete next year. That's a bonus. That's like having, you have that extra guy to come in when someone gets hurt. And so it's kind of nice to have that sitting there. But yeah, Riley Mills is a good player. Like, people are going to look at his draft spot and be like, oh, he's a 5th round pick. Why are you talking him up? Because if he hadn't blown out his knee, he would have been a 2nd round pick. And he's a guy that would deserve that and has the talent for that. And so, yeah, the fact that you've got Morris, who seems to be showing up and doing stuff, which we hoped we would see last year and we didn't. And this year, hopefully, it's not just a practice thing and it actually translates. But it appears that he's doing so much more this year than he did last year. So that's going to be there. And then you've got Riley Mills, who will be healthy next year and ready to go. And if Jared Ivey continues to do what he's doing, like, now all of a sudden, now you got some youth to go in there with your veterans at the position. And it starts to feel like this defensive line could be solid for years, because it's not like Murphy's going anywhere and Williams is under contract. And so, if you let a guy like Jerron Reed, who's getting older, go and you replace them with the young people that are like a Riley Mills, and then you still got depth and stuff behind him. That's the kind of stuff that you have to do as you go forward. Not this year, of course, but in the future, in order to keep that quality of defense going for long term. You have to be able to have that kind of succession strategy kind of built in. And it's nice to see the Seahawks developing that and working on building that, because they've really needed to kind of improve that pipeline of talent and not just have it be, like Williams wasn't a draft pick. He was a guy that they traded for because they didn't really have anyone. And they had to go sign Jerron Reed as a free agent. And you know what I mean? It's like, these are the types of things, like, you need these guys to you need to start developing these guys internally. And it's good to see the Seahawks starting to do that.
So that's good news at the defensive end position as far as the depth. Let's talk about a couple of spots where we still have a little bit of question marks. That would be the edge rusher group and the inside linebacker group. Now the front end starters, I think, are resolved and we're good. We're solid. We're really good. It's the back end stuff that we talk about right now because we just don't know. Now it appears on the edge, Nwoso is a guy that's going to be available and play for us at some point in this season. We're going to have him. He'd be the obvious 4th guy there out of that group. But so far, I think Tariq Smith and Connor O'Toole are 2 of the guys on the back end that have emerged as the 2 guys at that 4th defensive end spot that are competing for that, I think, final roster spot. Smith, according to most reports, including Bob Condata, have indicated that he's the guy now that's emerged as that 4th guy, with O'Toole just behind him. Talk to me about your comfort level with that edge group, and then we can talk about inside linebackers too.
Well, I'm glad that the top 3 spots at the edge group are so established and so well set, with Mafe, Holland, and Lawrence, because I'm not going into a season feeling good if you're expecting, you know, Smith or O'Toole to have significant, meaningful reps in every game. I'm just not. So having the top three guys set, and you know that you're going to get Nwoso back at some point, makes me feel a lot better about what's going on there. And maybe I'm not giving, O'Toole and Smith enough credit, but I haven't seen anything from them that tells me that they are impact players. They're guys that might fill in a rotation and, be bodies out there, but are they actually, good enough to make an impact? I don't know. I really don't.
And we won't know until they get called upon. DeMarcus Lawrence is doing his thing. There's no meter on him, by the way. Like, he's not a guy that they protect or take care of or watch his snap count and practice and all that kind of stuff. He's just a guy that comes in and seasoned vet that knows all the things. He's raised the bar for that entire group. In fact, everyone on the defense, I think, is watches him practice and just can't help but give their 1,000% on every play. And then Mafe and Hall both popped and have been popping in practice against our offensive line. You can say, well, that's not a good thing. If you're an offensive line fan, you can say that's not looking good. Or you can just say, listen, we've just got a great defensive line group here. Obviously they're gonna have their days on defense where they're gonna beat their counterparts. What are your thoughts on Boye, Mafe and Hall this year? In Mike Macdonald's scheme, it seems like they're set up to feast.
Oh, they're set up to feast. And we saw that last year where they did. Those are the two guys that did all the feasting as the edge players. Once this defense, got its feet under them and became good. Both of those guys just had monster years. And I would fully expect them to have monster years again this year, because they're also going to be, you've got a guy like Dexter Lawrence who can rotate in and make sure that those guys stay fresh and you can move them around and do all sorts of things. They're so athletic and they're so good at what they do. And I think that you're going to see them ready to just kind of take over games. And I freaking love that the Seahawks have those two guys sitting there. I mean, we were talking about, drafting and that a second ago with the defensive ends, with these edge rushers. Mafe was selected a couple of years ago, and Hall was selected the year after, and they've both developed into the guys that you expected them to be when you drafted them. And that is what a good draft looks like right there. And so now you've got a position group that is really good and is set, and not just for this year, but for the future, assuming that they re-sign Mafe. But
I will say, though, that going back to the draft, I will say that probably that this is almost my number one priority in the offseason, though. Not, and looking ahead, like in a crystal ball, this would be like, okay, we've got Lawrence, but obviously he's older. Mafe's under a contract year. Derek Hall is as well, coming up. And then you don't really have much behind that. Nwoso has shown that he's just injury prone. You're going to have to replace Nwoso on the roster at some point.
Yeah.
To me, this would be like the number one challenge, is to kind of refill this tank in the offseason. But
yeah, but you have your top, two guys, and
yes.
you're drafting your rotational piece, and so, but that's not a bad position to be in. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely, you have to get that rotational piece, but you're not looking for a high end starter in order to make your defense work. You've got your high end guys. You need, a high ceiling guy that can come in and learn and be your third edge rusher. And so I'm not going to disagree with you about it being a major priority, because it is. But is it more so than nose tackle?
Well, I think we are one injury away from having an issue, and we'll see. We hope that doesn't happen.
As opposed to inside linebacker, where you just have an issue.
Well, okay. So for better or worse, this training camp has provided an opportunity for those back end guys to really get a lot of reps. So that may end up helping us in the long run. Now, Ernest Jones has been out for over a week. He's back yesterday on a bereavement issue with his father passing, but he is back in the fold now. His job was never in jeopardy, so it was just a matter of time. Tyrese Knight is injured, though, has been out, did not play in the game, is still out with a knee. That's given opportunity for Drake Thomas and Patrick O'Connell to come in. From all reports, Patrick O'Connell has also really been stepping up in that weak side role for Knight, and Drake Thomas filled in nicely for Jones. It seems maybe
in practice,
those reps have helped us in the depth.
What did we see in the game against backups?
We held the Raiders down pretty good. I mean, Ashton Genty had -1 yard. Obviously, he only took 3 or 4 snaps, but I thought overall we did a really nice job against them.
Yeah, they also picked on our middle linebackers pretty hard. There was an entire drive that was nothing but find ways to exploit the middle linebackers. And, that took them all the way down for a touchdown. And so it was, to me, it's a major weekness. Yeah, they've gotten reps and that kind of stuff, but O'Connell's lack of speed and athleticism showed up pretty heavily in that game. And Drake Thomas, who has the speed and athleticism but doesn't have the size and isn't a sure tackler, that also showed up heavily in the Raider game. And that was not against starters. That was against backups and third string guys.
I will say this. You can add Nick Manwari's name to the equation at this position. Nick Manwari has been taking reps at that second linebacker spot, Tyrese Knight's spot. So I think the plan for me, obviously, I think for the coaches is to have Nick Manwari in there as opposed to Patrick O'Connell. Now, Drake Thomas would come in and fill in for Jones if needed, but Manwari would be that fourth guy, I think, on the roster that is just available if needed.
Yeah. Well, do you see what the Raiders were doing with Jamal Adams? They were finally doing what the Seahawks wanted to do, but the coaches wouldn't, they wouldn't actually make the change. They just flat put him in there.
Well, Jamal Adams wouldn't stay healthy for them to make the change. But yes.
Yeah, they just and he did some really good things with that speed.
He's looking at being the starter in that group, by the way.
He is. Absolutely. He should be. And so now you take a guy with the same kind of mentality, but he's bigger. He's significantly faster in a guy like Manwari. And if you're going to put him, you're going to give him a chance to be put in that same situation. Like, he's going to feast. He also is a safety. And so you got to be careful that you're not, getting your prized safety hurt. But if it means getting him on the field and not having him on the sidelines, then why not?
Manwari is a guy that I'm looking at that's going to take like 90% of the snaps in this defense.
You think so?
Yeah. Like, I was thinking initially at training camp, without seeing him yet, that maybe he'd be a 50% guy. And he would kind of, like Kyle Hamilton. Like, he would come in, Kyle Hamilton's rookie year, he was kind of a 50% of the snaps guy while they worked him in and tried him at different positions and so forth. And I thought Nick Manwari's kind of, that path for him seems to make sense. They want to keep Knight out there as well because Knight's not a bad player. Had a great season last year. He's looked to improve this year, it would seem like the natural place, if Nick Nwari is going to take more than 50% of the snaps, those snaps are coming from Knight. Because you're not going to take Bryant off the field or Julian Love, one of your best players on defense. And so I thought, well, this year maybe. But from what I'm hearing in camp is like Nick Nwari cannot be stopped. Like the guy is knocking down plays. He's or passes. He's doing everything that they want him to do in coverage, as well as coming up and being a force against the run in the box. And then doing everything that Knight is doing at that second middle linebacker spot and coming up and rushing the passer in disguised, blitzes. It seems to me that Nick Nwari is the athlete of the defense, and Mike Macdonald is going to use him as just a weapon. And guys like that, you don't take off the field.
Yeah. I mean, I'll definitely give you that. It's just that having him on the field means you're in the nickel, right? So that means that you're
not all the time. Not if you're taking Knight out. And what I'm saying is not necessarily alignment wise. Now you can call it whatever you want, but it doesn't necessarily translate that way after the play is snapped.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got Nwari essentially playing linebacker, then you're not. But you're still you've taken a linebacker off and you've brought in a defensive back, so you're in the nickel.
With the linebacker skill set, though.
Yes, but not the linebacker size. And so I mean that's the whole thing about what Nwari is. He's a unicorn, right? He's a guy that athletically is just, he'll be the fastest guy on the field for in most games. But he also has the 230-pound size and height and everything that you don't expect a guy that at that speed to have, and plays really physical and tackles well, and like he just does things that other guys in the league can't do. And that's why it was such a cool thing that the Seahawks, made the move and got him. He was such kind of an important draft pick for them. And honestly, what it really intrigues me about once they get him integrated, and because you're right, they can move him all over and he can do lots of different things from lots of different positions and be all over the field. But they've got another guy who can do that in Devon Witherspoon. So now you've got two. Now you've got two weapons that. And
Julian Love is not bad at doing all of those things as well.
Yeah, because he's a free safety / strong safety. He can do both. He started for the Seahawks and been good at both. And so you can move him around and do stuff, and he can cover in the slot if you have to, and that kind of stuff. So you've got two elite weapons and then one really nice piece that are super flexible, and they can do anything you want them to do. You want to talk about disguising things and being able to just confuse the hell out of opposing team quarterbacks. Like that's how you do it right there. Is you get a trio of guys like that, and then you get good players that can supplement and complement what those, the trio of guys that you're moving around are doing, with guys like, Bryant on the back end and Woolen on the outside. And suddenly you can do a lot of things that in coverage and whatnot that other teams can't do, and therefore opposing teams aren't going to be prepared for.
Yeah. I mean, and then you add D'Anthony Bell to that equation. He's been having a great camp. It's nice to have a guy like that probably won't even suit up on Sundays. You know what I'm saying? It's like D'Anthony Bell is a guy that you'd love to have on your roster, but probably will never see a snap. I mean, unless somebody's injured.
But he'll see snaps on special teams.
Right.
But you're right, on defense, he may not get on the field.
I mean, think about the way that we've been talking about this defense. I mean, some of these guys we've been talking about aren't even going to suit up on game day. Mm-hmm. Like, it's crazy. One of the players, so Shaquille Griffin is back in practice and has been practicing. I think his third practice was yesterday officially. And so they've been integrating him into the second team defense, which I think is probably a place where they'll settle with him.
Mm-hmm.
And the competition there is Josh Jobe, Griffin, and Pritchett. I think Pritchett has stepped up this year. We had kind of talked about Pritchett as being really fringy, bubble-ish, kind of almost not making the roster. And John Charles would be the guy just because of the special teams equation out of that. But Pritchett's really been stepping up in practice and making plays, had an interception in the game. So maybe at least my roster right now has him making it with Charles off. Talk to me about your idea of how that defensive back room comes together.
Well, and Charles is hurt, which doesn't help. Bubble players, when they get hurt, tend to get bumped. And that's unfortunate. But Pritchett played pretty well in the game. I was pleasantly surprised with how he did. I was a little disappointed in Josh Jobe. I thought that they picked on him a little bit. Then he had an interception on a really poorly thrown ball, which
according to reports though, he's kind of baited in the quarterback into that, and then came up underneath and made that interception.
Okay, that's not what it looked like when I was watching the game. It just looked like the ball was just really underthrown. But yeah, I mean, you get an opportunity, you go and you make the pick. I mean, that's how you win roster battles, right? You take advantage of the opportunities when you get them and you make plays. But they did pick on him a little bit, which I was a little bit like, that's not what I want to see.
Who else are you going to pick on now? Right.
Well, when you don't have Witherspoon and Woolen playing, you can pick on anybody. But yeah, I mean, he's been doing a bunch. Having Griffin in there as like the third or fourth guy, basically right there with Jobe trying to compete for playing time is great. It's a great spot to be in, because now you've got a guy with years of experience, years of starting experience, who's been really good in this league for a long time, and he's competing for a backup role. That'll give you an idea of what the depth looks like. I like that. And the fact that Pritchett has continued to step up and looked better, and he hasn't. Last year was really underwhelming, but he's shown that there's definitely something there. This year, it's going to make it hard for guys like, Jamarjean Charles to make a roster, and I don't see him making a roster at this point. It doesn't look like there's a spot for him. There just really doesn't.
Yeah, I think the defense, I mean, talk about it. I barely even think about the defense. It's one of the, other than just in a positive way. I think it's fairly well set. We're going to be top 5. These guys are interchangeable, dynamic. I think they'll be deployed in ways that I think will just be, it'll be amazing to watch. I'm just really fascinated by it. The offense is evolving. Don't know exactly what's going to happen the first week. Like and I'm not going to even know until game day in September. Like, there's just too many unknowns there. Like Sam Darnold, the offensive line, etc. Like, there's just some things there that you just don't know until you enter the season. But it's going to be fascinating for me. One other player I wanted to mention before we kind of wrap up, back on the offensive side, is Arroyo. It's hard not to talk about him, and we kind of made it through the entire show. We didn't mention him up front, but the guy continues to show up, make plays in practice, and is going to be a real instrumental part of the offense. AJ Barner's there as well. I just heard our offensive coordinator, I just lost his name in my brain.
Kubiak.
I just heard Kubiak in his press conference single out Brady Russell as a player that's showing up every day and doing all the things they ask him to do. And he he was asked if there was one player, or I think the special teams coach had a moment there where he had a press conference, Harbaugh, and asked if there was a single player that he could single out that exemplifies the way that they want to be on special teams. He singled out Brady Russell, which tells me he's making the roster.
Yeah, I mean yes, but who loses a roster spot for a fourth tight end?
Yeah, I know. I have him on my 53 on my roster, and the people that I have on the bubble are Tariq Young as the 6th wide receiver. But I have on my 53, so he's counting, but he's on the bubble. So I could say Tariq Young would be a player that you would bump. Christian Haynes, I have as a roster bubble player where they could try to sneak him on the practice squad. He's done so little in practice, so little in affecting anything that maybe another team would just let him be on a practice squad. And maybe if they needed somebody in a pinch, they would go pick him off. But I think he could get through on the initial practice squad. Quentin Bahana, you mentioned earlier, but also we have Peely, and they like Peely a lot. So I was thinking maybe one of those two. I don't know which one, but one of those two maybe could be a bubble guy. And then Patrick O'Connell, if they decide to keep 3 inside linebackers because Nick Manwari, Patrick O'Connell could be a bubble. So that's where I would think that you could manipulate the roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at, you're right. Tariq Young, the 5th or the 6th receiver, or you're pulling from the defense, and typically the linebacker edge area, because that's where your the drop off in talent to your depth players is the greatest.
Right. Unless Patrick O'Connell is like an amazing special teams player,
which he hasn't been at any.
And even then, career. You could get him. You could bring him up off the practice squad to kind of play at least 2 or 3 weeks. So,
but he hasn't been an amazing special teams player
so far.
He hasn't been. So, Brady Russell, I mean, I can see it. I also, because you've got a fullback and a third quarterback on your roster, I could see it being a challenge to find him a spot.
Right.
But yeah, there's some questions there as far as what do they do, and just this seems to be a natural place for me to bring up Robbie Utz again, just simply because I freaking loved the way he played on last week
right.
against the Raiders.
Right.
Man, it's fun having an old school fullback in there who can just clobber people. That's fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Andy Reid and company come in to Lumen Field on Friday night. Really nothing about their roster. I think they're going to play maybe a couple series. Maybe our guys do. We're going to see Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't really matter. So my question to you, and we'll wrap the show up this way, is what are you expecting to see on Friday night? What do you want to see? Are there any camp battles that can be won or lost in the game on Friday, where this seems like maybe this is the last time we'll see starters play in the preseason, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity, I think, for second,
should
third,
be the only time we've seen
to play.
We see starters in the preseason. What am I expecting? I just want to see the continued evolution of the offensive line and where guys are, and get a chance to see how Gray Zabel and company there are continuing to develop, especially if Chris Jones and those guys play, because they're a handful. And if Sindel and Zabel are able to keep Chris Jones like bottled up for the series or two that he's in there, and they can run the ball, I'm going to feel a lot better about that offensive line than I would do otherwise. Then again, if Jones is in there and just completely blows up the first couple series for the Seahawks, I'm going to feel about the same as the offensive line as I did all offseason. That the interior is still a major problem. So, that's really kind of what I'm going to be looking at. If Jones doesn't play, if the other guys, if they don't bring in their starters in there, then of course none of what we see is meaningful as far as evaluations go. So, I don't know. I want to see that. I want to see Torrey Horton do some awesome things. I want to see Jalen Milroe get some runs, some called runs, where he can, make people miss.
I don't think they're going to show too much. Yeah. I think we're going to end up seeing, part 2 of the Raiders game. Essentially, it's just, I really do think that they're going to just kind of hold a lot back, which, for better or worse. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I want us, Mike Macdonald and company have come out and said, listen, we're going to determine the starters after this game. I think they've kind of put that in the, written in pencil anyway, that this is the defining moment. And I don't know if anybody's job is on the line in this game, but maybe they want to see Bradford completely have 100% great reps. And there's no window or opportunity or opening for anybody else. That's it. He's taken the job. And Sundell, just really smooth. Every snap is good. The protections are called. Already, Kubiak has said that the center position has to be the smartest guy on the field, and I think that they're settling that competition. I think Sundell's going to take it, honestly. I don't know that there's not a lot of daylight between Oluwatimi and Sundell. And if Sundell's the guy, he's been practicing with the ones as a unit, especially with Bradford in there. That's essentially the starting 5 now for about 2 weeks in practice and in the game. And this is the second game with that same unit. I think that's it. I think that's what we're going to see. And I'm okay with it. I mean, it is what it is. I think we're going to be better than advertised, honestly. I think we're worried because we just don't know what we don't know, but also the coaches are seeing it every day. This is the offensive line that they put together. This is the scheme that's working for them. I think the scheme is really going to help our offensive line. And I think we're going to be a good running team. I think that we saw that a little bit in that game. And I think that the devotion to running the ball is there. And I think we're going to be successful. And I think if we are, and Sam Darnold's kind of that point guard quarterback, getting the ball into space, allowing the playmakers to make plays, and he does that successfully, I think we're going to be good. I think we could end up being like a top 15 offense, which, their first year in this scheme, in a transition kind of year with a whole bunch of new faces is not a bad thing. And I think it'll be complementary to that defense. And I think it's going to give us a really good shot to take the division and compete in the NFC at the end of the year.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think the division is, it's not, there's no team that's going to come in and dominate. All 3 other teams in the division have serious weaknesses. And I think the division is kind of up there. It's, someone's gonna go take it. And Seattle's got just as good of a chance as anyone else. Especially with that defense. The defense is going to be so good. And it's going to have them in every single game. All you need is for guys like, Darnold and Ken Walker to make a few plays, and you're going to be in position to win. And that's how you win games, and that's how you win divisions. And so I like that what we're seeing. I'm still a little like the lack of depth at linebacker, both inside and outside, is killing me. But everywhere else on that defense, I'm really excited. Just really excited.
I feel a lot better with Nick Manwari in there. It's like he's the wild card of the defense. He kind of plugs holes in 3 or 4 different positions, which is crazy. All right, let's get out of here. Let's have a great game on Friday. We'll come back here afterwards, maybe this weekend, Keith, and we can do a recap show properly this time. and kind of maybe talk about the roster a little bit, because I think things are be fairly well settled at this point. We really predict the 53. You can find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel, and hit that subscribe button when you do, and leave some comments. We always enjoy those. And until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.